Hi, we're here with Representative Maxwell Frost from Florida. You are the first Gen Z representative, which I guess that's a good thing. Well, you're going to tell us why. And you were elected at, what, 27?
25.
25. So you're the youngest person in Congress right now?
Yes.
Again, low bar. But still, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing here, how you're looking at what's going on, and the big issues you think are important.
Well, I appreciate it. I got involved in politics when I was 15 years old because I didn't want to get shot in school. And so gun violence is the issue that really pushed me into politics, and been organizing ever since, worked at the ACLU and then March for Our Lives. The issues I'm working on are gun violence, housing. We have a housing crisis in this country. During my campaign, I experienced homelessness for 2 months because my rent went up 33% in just a month. And then when I got elected, I couldn't rent an apartment in DC, and I got denied because my credit was bad, because I was living off my credit card during the campaign. And so I've experienced a lot of the brunt of this housing crisis, and so that's one of the other issues that we're focused on.
It's not just housing, it's affordability. Scott, you talk about this a lot. With the big issue for young people isn't necessarily the things you think they would be, but it's the deficit, for example. Scott.
Yeah, so Congressperson, if you talk about the housing affordability crisis, what specifically or what legislation or programs would you champion to make it easier for people your age to think about the quote-unquote American dream?
Well, I'd give a shout out to my bill. I have a bill called the End Junk Fees for Renters Act. This is really based on my personal experiences. What it does is end junk fees. What's a junk fee? Well, something that legally your landlord has to provide for you that you're being nickel and dimed for. Trash fee, this fee, lawn fee, that fee. In fact, in my district, we found a few different apartment complexes where your landlord can charge you between $40 and $60 every time you call, text, or email them for anything. And so this would eliminate those fees. The other thing it would do is eliminate the use of credit scores and being the end all be all in deciding whether or not someone can rent. Statistics show, or studies show, that credit scores are just not a good indication on whether or not someone's going to pay their rent. Number one, it doesn't impact your credit score at all if you're good at paying your rent. And the other thing is when a working person or a poor person falls on hard times, the first thing they cut from is not their rent. In fact, rent is one of the last things they cut from. What's the first thing? Food and medicine.
Right. So Scott talks a lot about sort of young people feeling left out, and that the country is oriented towards keeping seniors richer than ever, taking the stock market gains or whatever. How do you think young people think about this? I mean, the issues, AOC talked about a little bit about it last night, affordability and things like that. And among the things they should be concerned about, and you don't speak for all young people, but how do they look at the economy right now? Is it sort of winner takes all and old people win, or what?
I think it all has to do with lived experiences, right? I mean, young people aren't necessarily going online and reading all the statistics and data on what's going on. They're just like saying, I graduated school or I went straight into workforce. I'm having a hard time finding a place to rent. And if I have the money saved up, I'm being denied a lot of these places because the barrier to entry is so high right now. Because as consumers and tenants, we've lost a lot of power in the marketplace since COVID.
And ownership too.
And ownership. That's where I was about to get to that. Being a tenant is oftentimes the precursor to owning, and owning a home is the largest asset a working person will own in their lifetime. We're on track to not even be owning homes like that, right? And so we need to figure out, number one, how are we going to take care of our tenants and make sure they have more power in the marketplace, but also make sure that owning a home is actually an accessible dream and something people can actually obtain. In the state of Florida right now, we have a home ownership insurance crisis, which is impacting everybody, potential homeowners, current homeowners, seniors. I did a roundtable with seniors and new homeowners. We have seniors who are on a fixed income, and because their insurance rates were just hiked up so much, they're probably going to have to move out of the home they've been in their whole life.
What do you think of the idea of mandatory national service?
Mandatory national service, I'm against that. I mean, I do think, though, we should incentivize national service. But, part of the point and hallmark of our country is, freedom, and I think freedom to not serve is one of those things, but we should incentivize it. That's why we have to make sure we put good money into things like AmeriCorps. There's also Job Corps, these different organizations. Also, you can do military service or go into any kind of, be a first responder and different things like that. We can do a better job of making sure that these professions have higher wages. 75% of our military budget goes to contractors. I think our service members could be paid a little bit more. Same thing with our teachers. My mom's a public school educator of 37 years. She actually just retired. And she has been making the same amount of money for a lot of that time, right? I mean, and she's our educator. She's an educator, so with a master's degree. And so I think we have a lot of work to do in making these positions of service actually be able to help sustain someone's lifestyle.
So
life.
one thing Scott talks a lot about is the crisis of young men. That's one of his big topics.
Of young men?
Young men, which
Okay.
you are one of,
Yeah.
apparently.
The crisis of young men?
Of young men.
Oh,
And
they're
there's a
everywhere.
big gender gap right
They're
now
everywhere.
between women who are supporting Kamala Harris and men who are becoming more conservative.
Oh, okay.
Can you talk about that? How can she appeal to that and close that gap? Because Donald Trump scores ahead of her, though it's not changed a lot, and she scores way ahead of him on women. So can you talk a little bit about that, especially young men?
I think focusing on what we're talking about, housing, the economy, how are we going to make sure, which he is, that young people can get ahead? And I'm actually on the Vice President's National Advisory Board for the campaign, so I travel the country for her. Right after this, I'm going on a back-to-school tour hitting 6 states. And I'll tell you, when I'm talking with young men, everybody, they just want to know about how can the Vice President show us that government can actually work for us, right? The record's important, and what I always tell politicians when I was working on campaigns, I tell candidates, they want to know your record, but that's what they got with their last vote. They also want to know what they're going to get with this next vote. And she put forth a very aggressive and good housing platform that I think is going to help a lot of young
Why
people.
do you think some young men are attracted to Trump? It's a very strange phenomenon for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think the first thing is polling young folks, young men, young people can be a little difficult. I've worked in the youth vote space for my whole career pretty much. It's really volatile and can change very quickly. So I wouldn't necessarily buy that Donald Trump has this overwhelming majority of young men or that they're all fleeing towards him. But I think that something Donald Trump did in 2016 is he really appealed to people who may not have felt heard in politics before. It was a fake appeal, right? I mean, he was saying he wanted to drain the swamp, but he is the swamp. He was talking about this fake populism when he's part of that billionaire class, which is the reason so many people are in the conditions they find themselves in. And I think now that's being exposed. And so we just got to keep making sure people know about that. Events like this help us make that case to the nation. But again, what's really going to help us do this is going on the ground, speaking with people across the entire country, and that's what we're doing.
All right, Scott, last question, then I have one more.
Do you think TikTok should be divested?
I voted no on the TikTok ban bill. Would I prefer that TikTok be owned by an American or not by a foreign adversary? 110%. However, what we need to do, and Congress tends to do this a lot, is we don't actually do the work of legislating the regulations to ensure that we protect all the data privacy of people. We select one platform, have a bill that will probably ban it or end up in litigation that won't actually solve the problem. We could ban TikTok and be back at the same problem with some other platform in just 5 years. And so what I think we need to do is take a step back, pass really good data privacy bills. 2.0 is a great one. There's some other ones as well. But banning TikTok, I just don't think is a solution.
You're not worried about it as a propaganda vehicle for the CCP?
I'm worried about every single social media site being used for propaganda, but there's not really any proof that it's been done on a large scale, and we know that. So a lot of it's speculation. Am I concerned? Yes, I am concerned. But again, we can handle that problem and the problem for our domestic social media companies, which take our data, buy it,
We're aware.
sell it, and sell it to China
We're aware.
anyway.
We talk about it a lot.
Yeah, of course. So y'all know. But you're asking me the question. And so either way,
So in that vein, so a lot these are great things. They're fun to come to these events and things like that. And TV used to be a big deal, and now it's not. How do you look at how this is going to be consumed, and what has stuck out for you?
Well, now we're in the era of people really consuming things in bite-sized portions, right? And so
Snackable. They're called snackable.
Okay, snackable portions. And so a lot of people are going to be seeing smaller clips of these speeches, and there'll be a lot of people who watch the whole speeches as well, which is, we saw yesterday, we had some of our best speakers out there. Really exciting. We have, great speakers for the rest of the week, and I think we're trying to get this agenda out here, make sure people know that in terms of the economy, security, safety, opportunity, making sure people have what they need, Kamala Harris is the candidate that we need to elect here.
And what do you think stuck out last night?
The president's speech was really heartfelt. I'm a big Joe Biden fan. When I first got elected and he called me, we spoke about the fact that we shared something in common. He was elected to the Senate at 29 and was the youngest member of the Senate. I was the youngest member of the House. When I got in the Congress, my first bill was to create a federal office of gun violence prevention. The president took my bill used it as their framework for an executive order to make the office. And then he invited me to go to the White House to be a part of that. And we've been very highly involved with the White House.
The old and the young come together then.
I mean, I've collaborated and done so much work with Joe Biden and his entire administration. I have so much respect for the man. And I think yesterday we really cemented the fact that he said himself, he loves this job, but he loves saving our democracy and people even more. And the decision he made, when we talk about one of the greatest presidents of our country, we often talk about George Washington. And the point that we usually point to is the fact that he knew when it was time. Yeah, selflessness. And that's the difference between selfish goals and selfless people. I think Joe Biden showed that he's a selfless person who cares.
One more quick question. Kamala Harris has caught up. Do you think she has a big chance of winning here? She certainly has momentum.
Yeah. We're going to win this campaign. But what I'm telling people too, especially because I'm an organizer, is we can't let this excitement cloud us.
Yeah, that's what the Republicans did.
Yeah. We're not going to win no matter what. We're going to win when we do the work, if we do the work, and we will do the work. And that's what, as I've been traveling, I'll tell you, people are excited and they're getting to work. This excitement will translate into votes. And here's the good thing, especially on the youth vote. I think we're going to have the highest youth voter turnout we've ever had. But the young people we get to vote now, they're going to be lifelong voters. And so it's not just even about this election. It's about the one 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now.
Great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Thanks.
Yeah.